Hello people, it's Dodie, and you remember the screen porch spring doll? Well, she's gotten all cleaned up, as you can see, and now it's time to finish doing her repairs. Now she's in 6 different pieces. And the one place that we were having problems was on the side where the composition had worn away. Now, after cleaning her up and taking all her paint off, found out that she actually does fit very well, except for this one place. Now, the one place has got to be rebuilt. There's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can use milliput, as some people do, or you can use plain old composition to rebuild the one section, which is why we need to talk about, let's see if I can get that in there. Nope. Oh dear. Let's see if we can. Do you see the little pins? Those are straight pins, and they're for mechanical fastening. Whenever you're gluing one thing to another, you need a physical mechanical coupling like this. Now these are, like I said, just straight pins. Let me show you. Just a straight pin that I've put in there, and now I will cut it to length. You see, I don't need much, but I will just cut that little piece off. Be careful, they fly. To give me the little stub, come on, the little stub I need for the little bit of composition that I'm going to put on it. So how do you make composition? We all know that composition is nothing but glue and sawdust. This is finely sifted sawdust that I got from my local lumber yard. I just went up and asked for it, and they gave it to me, providing I had my own container. So I got me a small grocery sack, and I've had it for ages. Tip a little bit of glue, and this is old-fashioned mucilage that is pre-cooked. I did it myself. And you just keep mashing it up until you've got mash, mash, mash. You may need some more, but the whole point is you'll end up with your very own modeling compound, pretty much like Play-Doh. Oops, sorry about that. Mucilage is a French word for glue. And when you get glue and sawdust together, it'll start compressing. Now you want it to be a little bit wetter than this, because you're going to want it to adhere to the old composition. And it's pretty much a case of trial and error. The old composition that's on the doll, which means that it has got to get wet. And it's got to be wet enough to dampen the other half of the repair too. Yeah, hairpins are good for other things besides just hair. The nice thing about this is that it does not cure quickly, or at least so quickly that you can't do a little sculpting. Which is what you want to do, like for instance on that little thumb. We want to make a new little thumb, but we also want to match it to the other, and some of the plastics that are available out there just don't do that well. They dry up too quickly and you're left with having to sculpt with heavy-duty tools, and it really doesn't do all that well, which is the reason so many people use Milliput. I suppose it's just a case of personal preference. Yeah, this is messy, but so is Milliput. And yeah, you have to use the glue, but hey, you're going to use it anyway when you put it into having to glue the thing back together. Now it's beginning to hold together pretty good. And you test it to see how you like it. It's still a little bit dry for my taste. There we go. As you can see, it looks almost like Play-Doh. And what we're going to do is mash it onto our pins. And overfill. Always overfill, because you can always take it off. But it's hard, as you can see, to put it back in. Now the pins will hold this particular little lump. You can see where it's dampening the old composition. Now that was a knife mark. Hang on just a minute. That was a knife mark that shouldn't have been there. So we're going to smooth it out. The nice thing about this is that it doesn't dampen it enough to tear it down, but it reinforces. Gouges can be done this way. and you pack it in real good. And there we have the rough repair. We'll go back in a little later and smooth that out with a piece of sandpaper. This is the other side, where on the inside the composition had worn away and it was not quite even. And once again, it's kind of a rough Play-Doh. You just cram it in there. And you can see from the outside that it's going to be nice and even and ready for the sanding. The reason I like using this rather than Milliput is that it's the same product and it's a heck of a lot cheaper, to be honest about it. Now, as far as the little thumb, and you can see the working time is really good. Now what I'm doing now is eyeballing the other thumb. Shoving it into around the pin and into the pin to get the same shape. The tool I have are clay sculpting tools. 100 years ago, when I was a younger lady, I got them for, believe it or not, ceramics. I learned to do ceramics, and that's part of where I found my love for repairing things, because ceramics are a booger. Now I'm purposely leaving it a little too big because I want to trim it down some. Now there will be some shrinkage. Because all natural materials do tend to shrink. Alrighty, we've got a nice, neat new little thumb. Now, mechanical fastening is important because if you don't, the new joint that you make is going to be weaker than the original casting. It's just a fact of mechanics. Now, it may never break, but then again, it might, and make it worse for where you had the break. So, me being the type of belt and suspenders type of person, yeah, I'm gonna do mechanical fastening too. Now, what I'm doing now is just the little bitty pock marks for wear. Packing it in there. If you're going to do little bitty that are too small, to use a mechanical fastener, you have to mash it down real good. Hang on a second, need a little bit more. Glue to pack it with. Mash it down firmly. So you get a good adhesion with the glue. Yeah. And from here, it's just a case of artistry, what you feel good about. And what works for you. After all, it's your doll. And what you feel comfortable working with. Now, after it's dried, and it'll take at least 24 hours. I like to wait a couple of days to make sure. You know how assorted humidities and things like that work. And if it's really tiny, you can just cover it with the glue. It works well. In fact, you'll see in some cases it's starting to dry already. But you'll see what looks like an odd coating. It's just brushed with glue. You can use a children's art brush, the cheap little throwaway kind, to brush it all over the doll if you want to. But that's it. That's all you have to do. And see, I can begin to sculpt it now. But I'm going to leave it alone to let it set up so I can sand it properly. And my little thumb is beginning to dry out already. But that's it, folks. That's what we're starting to do. And you can see that the patch is beginning to dry out nicely. The one on the back is doing real well. Now, we'll let it go. Let it dry up. And in the meantime, check for other little places that need some reinforcement. Now, one thing, if you're going to get this on your working surface, do go ahead and get finished and wipe it up immediately, because otherwise you're going to end up with a mess. Because your point is just to make sure that you've got it as close to perfect as you can get it. And that's how you work with wood filler composition. And that's all I have for you, folks. We will see you later.